The dust settled around Amelia Edwards' pristine white boots as she stood frozen on Silver City's Main Street, clutching a crumpled letter that had shattered her world. The year was 1878, and New Mexico Territory's mining boom had brought fortune seekers and dreamers to this bustling frontier town nestled in the foothills of the Pinos Altos Mountains. But for Amelia, the promise of a new life had just collapsed like a played-out silver mine. "Miss Edwards, you look like you've seen a ghost," called Mrs. Peterson from the general store porch, her concerned voice barely registering through Amelia's shock. Amelia's fingers trembled as she folded the letter and tucked it into her pocket, forcing her breathing to steady. She'd traveled over 1,000 miles from Boston to marry Charles Wilcott, her fiancé of 2 years who had established himself in the territory's silver mining business. The letter delivered 3 days before their wedding explained in cold, practical terms that he had found another match more suitable to his position. Victoria Holloway, daughter of the territory's wealthiest mine owner, would make a more advantageous wife. "Just a bit of dust in my eye," Amelia called back, mustering a smile that felt brittle enough to crack her face. Pride wouldn't allow her to become the subject of town gossip. Not yet. She continued walking, her steps purposeful despite her inner turmoil. Silver City had grown explosively since silver had been discovered in 1870, transforming from a small settlement to a thriving hub of commerce. The town's wide streets accommodated freight wagons and stage coaches, while substantial brick buildings now stood alongside wooden structures with false fronts. It was a place of opportunity for everyone but her, it seemed. The wedding dress waited in her rented room above the millinery shop, delicate lace and satin that represented months of careful work, and a future now evaporated. Amelia had left everything behind: her teaching position, her modest family home after her parents passing, all to join Charles in building a life together. Now, at 22 years old, she found herself alone in a frontier town with limited funds and no prospects. As Amelia rounded the corner toward the millinery shop, she collided with a solid wall of flannel and leather. Strong hands steadied her shoulders before she could stumble backward. "Whoa there, madam. My apologies." Amelia looked up into the most startlingly blue eyes she'd ever seen, set in a sun-weathered face beneath a wide-brimmed hat. A small scar cut through his right eyebrow, giving him a perpetually questioning look. "The fault is mine, sir," she replied automatically, attempting to step around him. "Miss Edwards, isn't it?" he asked, removing his hat. "Kit Taylor. I run the Triple T Ranch outside town." Amelia paused, recalling that Charles had mentioned the neighboring rancher unfavorably, something about water rights disputes. She noted Kit Taylor's tall frame, broad shoulders, and the quiet confidence he carried without arrogance. "Yes, Mr. Taylor. Excuse me, but I'm rather in a hurry." His expression shifted subtly as he studied her face. "I heard about Wilcott. Town this size, news travels." Humiliation burned through her. "I see. Well, then you'll understand why I'd prefer to be alone." He nodded, stepping aside but not replacing his hat. "He lost more than he'll ever know, Miss Edwards." The simple statement, offered without pity but with quiet conviction, nearly broke her composure. Amelia managed a nod before continuing on her way, aware of his gaze following her down the street. Inside her rented room, Amelia finally allowed her tears to fall. The small space felt suffocating, with the wedding dress hanging from the wardrobe door, a ghost of promises broken. After crying until her eyes burned, she washed her face and assessed her situation with the practicality her father had instilled in her. Her teaching credentials were valid, but Silver City already had a schoolteacher. Her savings would last perhaps 2 months. She could return east on the next stagecoach, but to what? Her parents were gone, their modest home sold to finance her journey west. Pride and stubborn determination rose within her. She would not slink back east in defeat. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Winters, the milliner who had rented her the room, stood with sympathy etched on her kind face. "I've brought you some supper, dear. Thought you might not feel like joining the boarding house table tonight." "That's very kind, thank you," Amelia replied, accepting the tray. "I've also brought news. Mrs. Harrington at the hotel is looking for someone to help manage things. Her arthritis is acting up something fierce, and she needs a lady with good penmanship and figuring skills." The older woman hesitated. "It's not teaching, but it's respectable work." Amelia felt the first flicker of hope. "I'll speak with her first thing tomorrow." "Good girl, Mrs." Winters patted her hand. "And don't you fret about that Wilcott fellow. Victoria Holloway may come with her daddy's mining fortune, but she's got the personality of a rattlesnake and half the charm." After Mrs. Winters left, Amelia made a decision. She carefully removed the wedding dress from its hanger and folded it into her trunk. Tomorrow, she would begin building a new life, one that didn't depend on Charles Wilcott or any man. 3 days later, Amelia was installed behind the front desk of the Silver City Hotel, learning the rhythms of frontier hospitality from Mrs. Harrington. The work wasn't challenging intellectually, but it kept her busy and provided room and board along with a small salary. Most importantly, it allowed her to hold her head high as Charles Wilcott and his new fiancé paraded through town. The hotel's position on Main Street gave Amelia an excellent vantage point to observe Silver City life. She quickly learned which merchants extended credit too freely, which miners were flush with new silver strikes, and which ranch hands would leave their boots outside their rooms rather than track mud through the hotel. She became acquainted with the stagecoach drivers, Wells Fargo agents, and territorial officials who regularly passed through. And occasionally, she would see Kit Taylor riding into town on his chestnut gelding, handling his business efficiently before departing again for his ranch. Unlike many ranchers who used town visits as excuses for whiskey and cards, Taylor moved with purpose. When their paths crossed, he was unfailingly polite but never presumptuous, tipping his hat with a simple "Miss Edwards" that acknowledged her without demanding her attention. 1 month into her new position, Amelia was closing the hotel ledger when the door swung open, bringing with it a gust of autumn wind and Kit Taylor, supporting a young boy whose face was gray with pain. "Miss Edwards," Taylor said urgently, "this is Jimmy Pearson from my ranch. He's taken a bad fall from a horse, and Doc Sullivan is out delivering Mrs. Garcia's baby." Amelia rounded the desk immediately. "Bring him to the parlor. I'll fetch hot water and my medical kit." Taylor's eyebrows rose in surprise, but he didn't question her as he carried the boy to the small sitting room. Amelia hurried to gather supplies, glad for her father's insistence that she learn basic medical care. "Jimmy, I'm going to examine your arm," she explained gently, kneeling beside the sofa. "Mr. Taylor, please hold the lamp closer." The boy's forearm showed clear deformity, though thankfully the bone hadn't broken the skin. Jimmy bit his lip, trying not to cry. "It's a clean break," Amelia assessed. "It needs to be set before swelling makes it worse." She looked at Taylor. "I'll need your help." "You've done this before?" he asked, not doubting but confirming. "My father was a doctor in Boston. I assisted him for years." She didn't add that her father had hoped for a son to follow in his profession, and had taught his daughter instead, though society never would have permitted her to practice medicine formally. Taylor nodded. "Jimmy, Miss Edwards is going to help you. I need you to be brave for a few moments more." Working together, they set the bone, with Amelia's capable hands guiding the procedure and Taylor providing steady support. When Jimmy cried out, Taylor spoke quietly to him about horses and cattle until Amelia finished splinting the arm. "The doctor should examine him tomorrow, but this will prevent further damage," she explained, securing the final bandage. "He should stay somewhere in town tonight." "He can have my room," Mrs. Harrington offered from the doorway where she had been watching. "I'll bunk with my sister." After Jimmy was settled with a dose of laudanum from Amelia's medical kit, she walked with Taylor to the hotel porch. "You're full of surprises, Miss Edwards," he said, leaning against the railing. The street was quiet, most businesses closed for the evening. "Necessity teaches many skills," she replied, suddenly self-conscious about her rolled-up sleeves and disheveled hair. "Where did you learn to set bones?" "My father believed education shouldn't be limited by gender. He taught me what he could." She smoothed her skirt, though clearly not enough to recognize a faithless man. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she flushed with embarrassment. Kit Taylor studied her for a long moment. "Charles Wilcott measures value in silver dollars and social position. He wouldn't recognize true worth if it were branded on his hide." Amelia couldn't help her small laugh at the cowboy's blunt assessment. "Is that what you tell all jilted women, Mr. Taylor?" "You're the first I've had occasion to say it to," he replied with a slight smile. "And I meant it when I said he lost more than he knows." Something in his steady gaze made her heart beat faster, and Amelia looked away toward the darkened street. "It's getting late." "Indeed." He straightened and replaced his hat. "Miss Edwards, would you consider riding out to the ranch this Sunday? Jimmy's mother will want to thank you properly, and we're hosting a small harvest gathering. Nothing fancy, just ranch hands and neighbors sharing a meal." The invitation surprised her. "I couldn't impose. You'd be doing us a favor. We've got plenty of cowboys but precious few ladies to civilize the conversation." Amelia considered the alternative another Sunday watching from her window as Charles escorted Victoria to church. "I'd be delighted, Mr. Taylor." His smile transformed his face, softening the weathered lines. "I'll send a wagon for you at 10 o'clock. After he left, Amelia realized she felt something she hadn't experienced since arriving in Silver City: anticipation. Sunday morning dawned clear and cool, with the crisp edge of approaching winter in the air. Amelia dressed carefully in her blue wool traveling suit with its fitted jacket and modest bustle. She hesitated over her few pieces of jewelry before selecting a simple cameo brooch that had been her mother's. The wagon that arrived was not the rough farm vehicle she had expected, but a well-sprung buggy driven by Kit Taylor himself, wearing a clean white shirt and vest beneath his riding coat. Jimmy sat beside him, arm properly splinted now by the doctor but looking considerably more cheerful. "Miss Edwards," Taylor greeted her, jumping down to help her into the buggy. "You look lovely." "Thank you, Mr. Taylor." "Hello, Jimmy. How's that arm healing?" The boy grinned. "Doc says I'll be roping calves by spring." The drive to the Triple T Ranch took them through juniper-dotted hills and across a wide valley where cattle grazed on autumn-cured grass. As they traveled, Taylor pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the land. The Triple T comprised nearly 20,000 acres, substantial even by New Mexico standards. "My father started with 50 head of longhorns and a broken-down cabin," he explained. "Built it up over 30 years. "And now it's yours?" Amelia asked. A shadow crossed his face. "My brother Thomas and I ran it together after Pa died. Tom was killed in a stampede 3 years ago. His wife couldn't bear to stay after that, took their daughter back east." "I'm sorry," Amelia said softly, understanding the weight of family loss. He nodded acknowledgement. "What about your people? Any family wondering why you stayed in Silver City?" My parents are both gone. Father caught pneumonia last winter and mother followed within a month. They say it was her heart, but I think it was grief. Amelia looked out at the landscape. I was their only child. There was nothing to keep me in Boston after they died. Except Charles Wilcott, Taylor observed. Yes, well, we see how reliable that anchor proved to be. They crested a rise, and the Triple T headquarters spread before them a large, well-built ranch house of adobe and timber, surrounded by barns, corrals, and bunkhouses. Cottonwood trees lined a creek that curved past the buildings, their yellow leaves shimmering in the sunlight. "It's beautiful," Amelia breathed. "Home," Taylor replied simply, but there was pride in his voice. The ranch house offered surprising comfort with solid furniture, colorful Navajo rugs, and shelves filled with books. Mrs. Pearson, Jimmy's mother and the ranch cook, welcomed Amelia with genuine gratitude, ushering her to a place of honor at the long dining table where ranch hands, neighboring settlers, and a few townsfolk gathered. The meal was abundant roast beef, chicken, vegetables from the kitchen garden, and pies made with dried fruits. Amelia found herself seated between Kit and a weathered rancher's wife who peppered her with friendly questions about Boston. After dinner, several cowboys produced fiddles and harmonicas, and the furniture was pushed back for dancing. Amelia watched with delight as couples twirled around the main room, the music lively and the atmosphere joyful. "Would you care to dance, Miss Edwards?" Kit asked, extending his hand. "I should warn you, I only know proper Boston ballroom steps," she admitted. "Then I'll have to mind my cowboy ways," he replied with a smile. His hand was warm around hers, his other hand respectfully at her waist as they joined the dancers. Kit Taylor moved with surprising grace for a man who spent his days on horseback, guiding her confidently through the steps. "You dance very well for a rancher, Mr. Taylor," Amelia observed. "My mother insisted Tom and I learn. Said no son of hers would stomp around like an unbroken colt." His blue eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "She was from Virginia originally, had standards. She sounds formidable, she was. Would have liked you, I think." The simple statement warmed Amelia unexpectedly. As the afternoon progressed, she found herself relaxing, laughing at stories and even joining in a sing-along around the piano that Mrs. Bertram from the neighboring ranch played with enthusiastic, if imprecise, vigor. When it came time to return to town, Amelia was surprised by her reluctance to leave. The day had been a welcome respite from her careful existence at the hotel. "Thank you for including me," she told Kit as he helped her into the buggy for the return journey. "I haven't enjoyed myself so much in a very long time." "The pleasure was ours," he replied. "You brought a touch of civilization to our gathering." The ride back to Silver City was quieter, with comfortable silence between them as the setting sun painted the landscape in gold and crimson. As they approached town, Amelia's thoughts turned unwillingly to the fact that tomorrow she would resume her position at the hotel desk, likely to see Charles and Victoria as they made wedding preparations. As if reading her thoughts, Kit said, "I understand Wilcott and Miss Holloway are to be married at Thanksgiving." "Yes, I believe so," Amelia replied, keeping her voice neutral. "Will that be difficult for you?" His directness was startling but somehow not offensive. "Less each day," she admitted. "Though I confess my pride still stings more than my heart," Kit nodded thoughtfully. "Pride can take longer to heal sometimes." When they reached the hotel, he handed her down from the buggy with care. "Miss Edwards, I hope you'll consider visiting the ranch again." "Perhaps next Sunday." Amelia hesitated only briefly. "I would like that very much, Mr. Taylor." He tipped his hat with a smile that stayed with her as she prepared for bed that night, the memory of the day's simple pleasures a balm to her wounded pride. Over the weeks that followed, Sunday visits to the Triple T became a regular part of Amelia's life. Sometimes Kit would drive her in the buggy. Other times, to her delight, he would bring a gentle mare for her to ride, having discovered her fondness for horseback riding. They would explore the ranch's vast acreage, visit line cabins, or simply enjoy meals with the ranch family. Amelia found herself looking forward to these outings with increasing anticipation. Kit Taylor was unlike any man she had known in Boston, straightforward, capable, and unpretentious. He spoke his mind but listened carefully to her opinions, treating her neither as a delicate flower nor as a possession to be acquired. In town, the gossip had shifted from her broken engagement to speculation about her friendship with the rancher. Mrs. Harrington seemed to approve, mentioning offhandedly that Kit Taylor was considered one of the territory's most eligible bachelors, having built the Triple T into one of the most successful ranching operations in the region. "Not that I'm one to gossip," the older woman added with a wink that suggested otherwise. On a crisp November afternoon, Amelia and Kit rode along the creek that bordered the eastern edge of the ranch. The cottonwoods had lost most of their leaves, and the mountains in the distance wore a dusting of early snow. "I've been meaning to ask," Kit said as they paused to let the horses drink. "What would you think about reopening the schoolhouse at the crossroads?" Amelia looked at him in surprise. "The county school," he nodded. "It's been closed since Miss Blackwood left last spring. There are ranch children and mining families with young ones who need schooling. The county superintendent mentioned they're looking for a teacher." "I hadn't heard," Amelia said, her heart quickening at the possibility of returning to teaching. "I thought you might be interested. The position comes with the teacherage, small but decent, and it's only 4 miles from the ranch." Kit studied the distant mountains. "Closer than town." The implication hung in the air between them. Amelia considered carefully before responding. "I would certainly be interested in teaching again. But Mr. Taylor—" "Kit," he corrected. "After all these Sundays, I think we might use our given names, don't you?" "Kit," she amended, finding she liked the informality. "I wouldn't want to be offered a position based on friendship rather than qualifications." He turned to face her fully. "Amelia, no one who knows you would question your qualifications. But if it helps, I've not mentioned our acquaintance to the superintendent, simply that I knew of a qualified teacher looking for a position." His integrity touched her. "Then yes, I would very much like to apply for the teaching position." Kit's smile was warm. "I'll let Superintendent Patterson know. He'll likely call on you at the hotel this week." They rode back toward the ranch house, discussing the logistics of the school and the families whose children would attend. Amelia felt a growing excitement about returning to the profession she loved. As they approached the ranch, Kit suddenly stiffened in his saddle, eyes fixed on the yard. A sleek black carriage with silver fittings stood before the house, an ostentatious vehicle that looked out of place among the ranch wagons and saddle horses. "Expecting visitors?" Amelia asked. "No," Kit replied, his expression darkening. "But I recognize that carriage. It belongs to Edward Holloway." Amelia's stomach dropped at the name. Victoria's father, the mine owner who was soon to be Charles's father-in-law. "We can ride back to town if you prefer," Kit offered, his concern evident. "You needn't face them." Amelia straightened her spine, touched by his consideration but unwilling to retreat. "Thank you, but I've done nothing wrong. I see no reason to hide." His admiration was evident as he nodded. "As you wish." They rode into the yard, where a ranch hand took their horses. As they approached the house, the door opened, and 3 figures emerged onto the porch. Edward Holloway, a corpulent man with an expensive suit and watch chain, his daughter Victoria, slender and fashionably dressed, and Charles Wilcott, whose face registered shock at the sight of Amelia. "Taylor," Holloway called, his tone falsely jovial. "Good of you to finally arrive. We've been waiting to discuss business." "Mr. Holloway," Kit acknowledged coolly. "I wasn't aware we had an appointment. Miss Edwards and I have been riding the east boundary." Holloway's eyes narrowed at Amelia, recognition dawning. "Ah, Miss Edwards. I believe you're acquainted with my daughter and her fiancé." Victoria looked Amelia over with barely concealed disdain, while Charles had the grace to appear uncomfortable. "We've met," Amelia replied evenly, removing her riding gloves. "Good afternoon, Miss Holloway, Mr. Wilcott." Charles cleared his throat. "Amelia, I didn't expect to see you here." "Clearly," she replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. An awkward silence descended until Kit stepped forward. "What business brings you to the Triple T, Holloway?" The older man's expression shifted to one of calculation. "The rail spur to the mines will be completed by spring. The railroad needs right-of-way through the northeast section of your property." "We've discussed this before," Kit replied. "I'm not interested in selling that land." "The offer has improved," Holloway pressed. "Wilcott here has been authorized to negotiate on behalf of the railroad's interests." Charles stepped forward, assuming a businesslike demeanor. "We're prepared to offer a very generous sum, Taylor. The territory is changing. Mining and railroads are the future. And cattle ranching is the past. Is that what you're suggesting?" Kit asked, his tone deceptively mild. "Progress is inevitable," Holloway stated flatly. "The railroad will find a way through, with or without your cooperation. Better to profit than stand in the way." Amelia watched the exchange with growing understanding. The northeast section of the ranch contained the watershed that supplied water to the Triple T's best grazing land. A railroad cutting through would fundamentally alter the ranch's operation. "My answer remains the same," Kit said firmly. "The Triple T is not for sale, not in pieces and not as a whole." Victoria made a small sound of derision. "Such sentimentality over dirt and grass. It's hardly becoming in a businessman." Kit's expression didn't change, but Amelia saw his jaw tighten. "This dirt and grass has supported 3 generations of my family, Miss Holloway. I consider that worth preserving." "At the cost of progress for the entire territory," Charles challenged. "That's remarkably selfish." Amelia couldn't remain silent. "There's nothing selfish about protecting one's heritage and livelihood, Charles, particularly against those who define progress as lining their own pockets." Charles flushed with anger. "You don't understand the complexities involved." "I understand that 3 months ago, you found Victoria's father's connections more valuable than your engagement vows," Amelia replied evenly. "Perhaps your judgment on matters of value isn't entirely trustworthy." Victoria's face contorted with fury. "How dare you speak to my fiancé that way, you—" "That's enough," Kit interrupted, his voice carrying quiet authority. "Miss Holloway, Mr. Wilcott, Mr. Holloway, I believe our business is concluded. I'll have one of my men drive you back to town." Holloway's face reddened. "This isn't over, Taylor. The railroad has ways of acquiring what it needs." "Is that a threat?" Kit asked, his hand moving subtly closer to his sidearm. "A reality," Holloway retorted, turning toward his carriage. "Come, Victoria, Charles, we're wasting time here." As they departed, Amelia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "I apologize for speaking out of turn." Kit's expression softened as he looked at her. "Don't apologize. You spoke the truth." "Will they cause trouble for you?" "Likely. Holloway isn't used to being refused." He led her into the house, where Mrs. Pearson tactfully made herself scarce after providing coffee. But the Triple T has weathered worse than Edward Holloway's schemes. Amelia warmed her hands around the coffee cup. Charles always said you were stubborn about progress. Is that what he called it? Kit gave a dry laugh. There's a difference between progress and greed disguised as progress. The railroad is necessary, but not at the cost of destroying what makes this country worth living in. As they talked, Amelia realized how different Kit's vision of the territory was from Charles's. Where Charles saw opportunities for extraction and profit, Kit saw a landscape to be worked with, not conquered, a place where people could build lasting homes rather than temporary fortunes. I'm beginning to understand why you and Charles were at odds, she observed. You want very different futures for this land. Kit looked at her thoughtfully. What future do you want, Amelia, now that Boston and Charles are behind you? The question caught her off guard with its directness and importance. I want purpose, she answered honestly. Teaching gives me that, and I want. She hesitated, then continued with newfound clarity. I want to build something lasting, not just pass through this life taking what I can. His blue eyes held hers. Then we want similar things. The words carried weight beyond their simple meaning, and Amelia felt the shift between them, a recognition of something deeper than friendship developing. The confrontation with Holloway marked a turning point. Within a week, Amelia had interviewed with Superintendent Patterson and been offered the teaching position at the Crossroads School. Mrs. Harrington was disappointed to lose her, but understood the appeal of returning to teaching. Besides, the older woman said with a knowing smile, the school is much closer to the Triple T than to town. Amelia began preparations to move into the small teacherage attached to the schoolhouse, planning to open classes after the new year. Kit and several ranch hands helped repair the building, which had stood empty for months, replacing broken windows and ensuring the stove worked properly. As Thanksgiving approached, Amelia found herself dreading the Wilcott-Holloway wedding scheduled for the holiday weekend. She had believed herself past the hurt, but the prospect of watching Charles marry Victoria in Silver City's church still unsettled her. The day before the wedding, Kit arrived at the hotel unexpectedly. "Get your coat," he said without preamble. "I need to show you something." Curious, Amelia complied, following him to where his wagon waited. Inside was a small trunk she recognized as having been delivered on yesterday's stagecoach. "What's this about?" she asked as he helped her onto the seat. "Patience," was all he would say as he drove out of town, taking not the road to the Triple T but a different route that wound into the foothills. After several miles, they turned onto a narrow track that led to a small, well-built cabin nestled among pine trees. Smoke rose from its chimney and the windows glowed with warm light. "Whose home is this?" Amelia asked, confused. "At the moment, no one's," Kit replied, bringing the wagon to a stop. "It was a line cabin originally, but my father expanded it years ago. I've had the men fixing it up these past weeks." He helped her down and led her to the door. Inside, Amelia found a cozy space with simple but comfortable furnishings. A fire burned in the stone fireplace, and the small kitchen held the aroma of coffee and baking bread. "Mrs. Pearson sent provisions," Kit explained, removing his hat. "I thought you might prefer to spend the wedding weekend here rather than in town. The school is just 2 miles down the road, so you could use the time to prepare your classroom if you wish." Amelia was touched by his thoughtfulness. "You arranged all this so I wouldn't have to witness Charles's wedding." "Partly," he admitted. "But also because I thought you might enjoy the quiet before taking on 30 students." She moved through the cabin, noting the books on the shelf, the quilt on the bed, the care taken with every detail. "It's perfect," she said softly. But what about propriety? I can hardly stay here unchaperoned. Mrs. Bertram from the neighboring ranch will stay with you, Kit assured her. She'll arrive this evening, and I've brought the things you packed for moving to the teacherage. The relief of avoiding the wedding mingled with appreciation for Kit's consideration. Thank you, she said simply. Knowing the words were inadequate, he smiled, the warmth reaching his eyes. You're welcome. I'll leave you to settle in. Won't you stay for coffee at least? He hesitated, then nodded. For a while, they sat before the fire with coffee, talking easily about the school, the ranch, and the coming winter. As shadows lengthened outside, Amelia found herself reluctant for him to leave. Will you come for Christmas dinner? She asked as he finally rose to go. At the teacherage. It's small, but I'd like to thank you for all you've done. I'd be honored, he replied, putting on his hat. At the door, he paused. Amelia, I want you to know something. What I said that first day about Wilcott losing more than he knows, I meant it, but I understand now just how much he lost. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Before she could respond, he tipped his hat and was gone, leaving her with fluttering emotions and a sense of anticipation she hadn't felt in a very long time. The weekend passed peacefully, with Amelia preparing lessons and enjoying the tranquility of the cabin. Mrs. Bertram proved a genial companion, sharing stories of the area's early settlement days. By the time Amelia moved into the teacherage on Monday, Charles and Victoria's wedding had passed without her having to endure a single moment of it. School opened on January 3rd, 1879, with 26 students ranging from 6 to 16 years of age. The children came from ranches, mines, and small homesteads, arriving on horseback, in wagons, or on foot. Amelia found teaching them exhilarating and challenging, adapting her Boston education methods to the practical needs of frontier children. Kit visited regularly, sometimes bringing books or supplies, other times simply stopping by on his way to check cattle in the high pastures. Their friendship deepened through the winter months, with conversations ranging from literature to politics to ranching techniques. Amelia found herself sharing thoughts she'd never expressed to Charles, and Kit listened with genuine interest. Christmas dinner at the teacherage became a warm memory. Kit arriving with a small pine tree he insisted on setting up, presenting her with a hand-carved wooden box for her teaching supplies. They had talked late into the evening, reluctant to end the day. As spring approached, whispers of trouble began to circulate. Holloway and the railroad had not abandoned their plans, and rumors suggested they were pursuing legal challenges to force access through the Triple T land. Kit mentioned concerns about water rights and surveying discrepancies, but assured Amelia the situation was manageable. One April evening, as Amelia was grading arithmetic papers, an urgent knock sounded at her door. She opened it to find Jimmy Pearson, now healed and working as a full ranch hand, his expression grave. Miss Edwards, Mr. Taylor sent me to fetch you. There's been trouble at the north boundary. Men claiming to be railroad surveyors cut fences and diverted the creek. Mr. Taylor confronted them and there was shooting. He's hurt. Amelia's heart lurched. How badly? Bullet grazed his side. Doc Sullivan's at the ranch, but Mr. Taylor's asking for you. Without hesitation, Amelia gathered her medical bag and a change of clothes, locking the schoolhouse behind her. Jimmy had brought a horse for her, and they rode hard through the gathering dusk toward the Triple T. The ranch house was lit up, ranch hands gathered on the porch speaking in low, angry voices. Inside, Amelia found Dr. Sullivan emerging from Kit's bedroom. "How is he?" she demanded, her voice tight with fear. "Stubborn as ever," the doctor replied with a grim smile. Bullet creased his ribs, painful but not life-threatening if infection doesn't set in. I've cleaned and bandaged it, but he needs rest and watching. I'll stay with him, Amelia said firmly. The doctor nodded, unsurprised. I thought you might. Change the dressing morning and night. Watch for fever. He handed her a bottle of laudanum. For the pain, though, he'll fight taking it. When the doctor had gone, Amelia entered Kit's bedroom. He lay against the pillows, his face pale but his eyes alert. His torso was wrapped in white bandages, a faint red line visible at the edge. "You're here," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Of course I'm here." Amelia set her bag down and moved to his side, professional concern masking her deeper emotions. "Jimmy said you were shot." "Hardly more than a scratch," Kit insisted, though his wince as he shifted belied his words. "Tell me what happened," she said, checking his pulse while he talked. Kit explained how railroad men had entered Triple T land, claiming they had legal authorization to survey. When confronted, they had become belligerent. During the ensuing argument, one had drawn a gun. "I wasn't fast enough," Kit admitted. "Got my shot off after his." "Did you hit him?" "Winged him. Enough to make them retreat." His expression darkened. "But they'll be back with more men and likely legal papers, real or forged." "This has gone beyond business," Amelia observed, helping him sit up slightly to drink water. "It was never just business with Holloway," Kit replied grimly. "He wants to control everything and everyone in the territory. My refusal challenges that control." Amelia stayed the night in a chair beside his bed, dozing fitfully. By morning, Kit was running a slight fever, though he insisted it was nothing. She changed his bandage, noting with concern the redness around the wound. "I'm staying until this heals properly," she informed him, ignoring his protests. "Mrs. Pearson can take a message to the school. My students can manage a few days with reading assignments." For the next 3 days, Amelia divided her time between nursing Kit and conferring with his foreman about ranch operations. The fever rose and fell, finally breaking on the 3rd night. Throughout his illness, Kit spoke of the ranch's future, his concerns about Holloway's influence, and occasionally, in fever-induced candor, his feelings for her. "Should have told you sooner," he murmured during one feverish episode. "Knew the moment I saw you standing on that street with that letter. So brave, so beautiful." Amelia held his hand, her own emotions in turmoil. "Rest now. We'll talk when you're better." By the 5th day, Kit was recovering well, sitting up and insisting on reviewing ranch accounts. Amelia was preparing to return to the school when a ranch hand galloped into the yard. "Riders coming. Holloway, Wilcott, and the sheriff with papers." Kit struggled to rise, but Amelia pushed him firmly back. "You're not facing anyone in your condition. Where's your foreman?" "Checking the north fence line," Kit said, frustration evident. "Amelia, I need to handle this." "You need to heal," she countered, thinking rapidly. "I'll speak with them." Before he could protest further, she straightened her skirt and walked purposefully to the porch. Edward Holloway's carriage had just pulled up, followed by Charles on horseback and Sheriff Davis, who looked decidedly uncomfortable. "Gentlemen," Amelia called, her voice clear and authoritative. "Mr. Taylor is indisposed. I speak for the Triple T in his absence." Holloway scowled. "This is ranch business, Miss Edwards. Fetch Taylor." "Mr. Taylor is recovering from a gunshot wound inflicted by men claiming to represent the railroad's interests," she replied coldly. "As his legal representative in this matter, I'll receive any documents you've brought." Charles looked startled. "Legal representative? Since when are you qualified?" "I hold Mr. Taylor's power of attorney during his recovery," Amelia interrupted, the lie flowing smoothly. "Sheriff Davis, I presume you have legal papers to serve." The sheriff dismounted, approaching with a sealed envelope. Court order authorizing survey access across the Northeast section, he explained apologetically. Signed by Judge Wilson. Amelia took the document, breaking the seal to review its contents. Her father's legal training proved useful, as she identified several procedural flaws in the order. This appears to be predicated on a survey conducted without proper notification to the landowner, she observed, looking up at Holloway. And signed by a judge who has significant investments in your mining operations. An interesting coincidence. Holloway's face darkened. The order is legal and binding. Perhaps, Amelia conceded. But it will certainly be challenged in territorial court, with evidence of your surveyor's trespassing and assault. I imagine Governor Wallace would be most interested in learning how a private mining interest is manipulating county officials. Charles stepped forward, his expression a mixture of frustration and grudging respect. Amelia, be reasonable. The railroad is coming whether Taylor likes it or not. No one disputes the value of the railroad, Charles. What we dispute is Holloway's right to determine its path based on what benefits his mines, regardless of the cost to others. The standoff continued for several minutes, with Holloway making threats and Amelia calmly countering each one. Finally, Sheriff Davis cleared his throat. Miss Edwards makes some valid points about procedural issues, he admitted. Perhaps we should revisit this after consultation with the territorial authorities. Holloway fumed, but with the sheriff unwilling to enforce the questionable order, he had little choice but to retreat temporarily. As they prepared to leave, Charles lingered behind. "You've changed," he said quietly to Amelia. "No, Charles," she replied. "You simply never knew me." When she returned inside, Kit was sitting up, having heard every word through the open window. His expression was a mixture of admiration and amusement. "My legal representative?" he asked, eyebrow raised. "It seemed expedient," Amelia replied, unable to suppress a small, triumphant smile. "They believed it." "Because you believed it," Kit observed. "Where did you learn to handle legal documents like that?" "My father believed daughters should be educated in practical matters. Law was one of his interests." She sat beside his bed. "It won't stop them permanently." "No, but it gives us time." Kit reached for her hand. "Amelia, what you did out there, no one has ever fought for the triple T like that except family." The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "I couldn't let them take advantage of your injury. It's more than that, and you know it." His fingers tightened around hers. "I've wanted to say this for months, but the timing never seemed right. I love you, Amelia Edwards. Not for what you can bring me or how you look on my arm, but for who you are, your courage, your intelligence, your heart." The declaration, so simply stated yet so profound, brought tears to Amelia's eyes. "Kit, let me finish," he continued. "When I said Wilcott lost more than he knew, I had no idea how right I was. Every day I know you, I understand more clearly what a fool he was." He sat up straighter, wincing slightly. "I'm not asking anything of you now. You've built a new life here on your own terms, and I respect that, but I want you to know where I stand." Amelia found herself unable to speak past the emotion tightening her throat. Instead, she leaned forward and gently pressed her lips to his, a brief, tender kiss that conveyed what words could not. When she pulled back, Kit's eyes were wide with surprise and hope. "I love you too," she whispered, "in a way I never knew was possible." The conflict with Holloway was far from over, but that moment marked a profound change in Amelia's life. In the weeks that followed, as Kit recovered and legal challenges were filed against Holloway's tactics, their relationship deepened. Amelia continued teaching while spending evenings and Sundays at the Triple T, helping with correspondence and legal matters. By early summer, Governor Wallace's office had become involved, investigating allegations of corruption in the county government. Holloway's influence began to wane as evidence mounted of improper dealings. The railroad ultimately negotiated a new route that skirted the Triple T's crucial watershed, while still serving the mines, a compromise that benefited the territory without destroying what Kit had built. On a warm June evening, almost a year after Amelia had arrived in Silver City, Kit took her riding to the small cabin where she had stayed during Charles's wedding. The path was lined with wildflowers, and the setting sun bathed the hills in golden light. "I've been thinking about this cabin," Kit said as they dismounted. "It has possibilities." "It's a lovely spot," Amelia agreed, wondering at his thoughtful expression. Kit took her hands, drawing her to face him. "Amelia, when you came to Silver City, you were planning to be a rancher's wife. That didn't work out as expected," she smiled wryly. "An understatement. But sometimes life's disappointments lead us where we're meant to be." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "I'm asking if you'd consider becoming a rancher's wife, after all, but a different rancher, one who knows exactly what he'd be gaining." Inside the box was a ring with a modest diamond flanked by sapphires that matched Kit's eyes. Amelia's heart soared as he continued. "I know you love teaching, and I would never ask you to give that up. We could expand this cabin, make it a proper home. It's close enough to the school for you to continue teaching, and close enough to the ranch for me to manage things." "You've thought this through," Amelia observed, her voice unsteady with emotion. "I've had months to think about it," Kit admitted. "About what kind of life we could build together. Will you marry me, Amelia?" "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "Yes, with all my heart." They were married in August at the Triple T, with students, ranch hands, and townspeople gathering to celebrate. Mrs. Harrington wept openly, declaring she'd known all along they were perfect for each other. Even Sheriff Davis attended, bringing news that Edward Holloway was facing charges for attempted bribery of county officials. Charles and Victoria Wilcott had left the territory by then, returning east after Holloway mining suffered financial setbacks. Their departure was noted but not mourned. As Amelia and Kit exchanged vows beneath the cottonwood trees, she reflected on how completely her life had transformed in just over a year. The letter that had once seemed a devastating end had actually been a beginning, the first step on a path to a love deeper and truer than she had imagined possible. Their cabin, expanded as Kit had promised, became a home filled with books, music, and laughter. Amelia continued teaching, establishing Silver City's first lending library in a corner of her schoolroom. Kit's management of the Triple T brought prosperity, allowing them to improve conditions for the ranch hands and their families. 2 years after their wedding, Amelia gave birth to their first child, a son they named Thomas, after Kit's brother. 2 years later, a daughter, Sarah, joined their family. The children grew up between the schoolhouse and the ranch, learning both academics and practical skills. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Kit surprised Amelia with a trip to Boston to visit her parents' graves and show the children the city where their mother had grown up. Standing in the cemetery where her parents were buried, Amelia felt a sense of completion. "They would have loved you," she told Kit as he stood with an arm around her waist, "and they would have been so proud of the life we've built." "I wish I could have known them," he replied, "to thank them for raising such an extraordinary daughter." Later that evening, as they walked through the city of her youth, Amelia spotted a familiar figure emerging from an elegant restaurant, Charles Wilcott, older and heavier, escorting not Victoria but another expensively dressed woman. For a moment, their eyes met across the street. Charles froze, recognition and something like regret crossing his face. Kit followed her gaze, his arm tightening protectively around her. Do you want to speak to him?" Amelia considered the man she had once planned to marry, seeing him now with clear eyes, handsome still, but shallow, constantly seeking advancement through whatever connection served him best. "No," she said softly, turning away. "There's nothing to say. He lost more than he'll ever know, but I found everything I never knew I needed." Kit's smile was warm as he bent to kiss her, there on a Boston street far from their New Mexico home. "Let's go back to our children," he suggested. "We have a long journey ahead." "And a wonderful life waiting," Amelia agreed, her heart full. They returned to Silver City and the Triple T, to their expanded cabin and growing family, to the life they had built together from the ashes of a broken engagement. Over the years, the territory became a state. The railroad brought changes both good and challenging, and Silver City grew from a mining boomtown to an established community. Through it all, Amelia and Kit faced each development as partners, raising their children, managing the ranch, and contributing to their community's growth. The schoolhouse expanded to accommodate more students, with Amelia eventually training other teachers to carry on her work. Sometimes on clear evenings, they would ride to the highest point on the Triple T land, where they could see for miles across the territory they both loved. Sitting together, as the sun set behind the mountains, Amelia would remember that moment of devastation on Silver City Street, letter in hand, and marvel at how completely heartbreak had transformed into blessing. "Any regrets?" Kit asked her once as they watched their children racing horses in the valley below. Amelia shook her head, leaning against the strength of his shoulder. "Not one. Everything led us here, exactly where we were meant to be." And in the golden light of the setting sun, with the ranch spread out before them and their children's laughter rising on the wind, Amelia knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true home not in a place, but in the love of the man beside her, who had recognized her worth when she needed it most.